Welcome to Minerva. This video is about your thoughts create your reality, one of the most overhyped spiritual phrases of all time. It sounds powerful, it sounds healing, but if you actually take it literally, it becomes absurd. Because if thoughts really created reality, then nobody would get abused, sick, blindsided, or born into poverty, chaos, or violence. And yet, all of that happens anyways. The idea that someone would think themselves into misery is also BS, and no one can convince me otherwise. Your thoughts are not the master controller of the universe. The idea is not wisdom, it's fantasy, narcissistic, and egotistical. What your thoughts do affect is how you interpret reality, how you respond, what you tolerate, what you pursue, what you keep repeating. That matters, but it's not the same thing as creating every event in your life. I remember learning about the Roger Bannister effect in a psychology course. The effect is essentially you imagining you can break the 4-minute mile and then being able to actually do it. So all the runners had to do was imagine themselves beating this 4-minute mile, and boom, they were able to beat the mile. Now, in reality, that's not what happened. By believing it was possible for them to beat the 4-minute mile, it pushed these runners to train harder. They stayed committed and keep pushing their limits. In that sense, thoughts influenced their action, and action helped create the result. That's different from saying thoughts alone create reality. Once people start deeply believing their thoughts create reality, suffering also becomes your fault. So if you get hurt, you attracted it. You're stuck. Well, you manifested it. You're struggling right now? Yeah, you're not thinking right. And you're traumatized? You must have some kind of block. And that's not empowerment. That is spiritual victim blaming. And many of you will self-flagellate thinking you're helping yourself. And if you are victimized, then the predator is free from accountability because, well, it's your fault, right? Because your mindset was somewhere else. You weren't aligned, apparently. I want you to imagine young children being victimized by people they trust and you telling them your thoughts is what created this adversity. Think about it. To me, saying that to a child gives me the ick because it's deeply unjust and ignores basic neuroscience. A child's nervous system is about survival, not manifestation. And trauma happens to you, not from you. Some people who cause harm get away with it not because their thoughts are more powerful, but because they're skilled manipulators protected by systems that reward deception. It's ridiculous when people start acting like villains are just clear thinkers, when in reality, they're successful manipulators that lie better, exploit faster, and feel less guilt than decent people do. That's not alignment. That's a lack of conscience. The same applies to privilege. Some people who are born into wealth, networks, and access. Some build empires. Others simply inherit it. Either way, their thoughts didn't create the privilege. Their circumstances did. Those who've had to build something from the ground up understands just how much harder that path is. And many people born into privilege don't realize how different their outcomes might have been without those advantages. So I'll give you a real life example. A person with a small loan of $1 million can buy the business license, rent a location, pay people to build a nice website, buy the product in bulk, and advertise their business. A person starting from nothing may have to start in a location that's not ideal. Like maybe they're just selling things out of their trunk or out of a storage unit. And then they may have to build their own website if they have the capacity or the capability to do so. If they do not know how to build this website and they try, it may be a semi-okay website. Simple, limited, but a website nonetheless. Then on top of that, advertisement may be limited to a cardboard sign on the side of a road. They don't have the money to be able to advertise on all these different websites because it's not free. It costs money. Just like you have companies that are able to reach out to influencers and have them advertise their business, sometimes they're giving them something in return. Now, I'm sure there's I'm sure there's some influencers that may take the deal with just getting product as opposed to getting actual money, but many of the ones that have been doing it for a while, they're not going to do that, especially if they have a large platform. Regardless, the point is, having money can put you in a much further level in your business than when you have nothing at all. Advertisement is important because you're trying to gain customers. If people don't know you exist or your product exists or your service exists, they're not going to spend money on it. And if you have a company that you're just starting and it doesn't have a reputation yet, people are not willing to use it. They're not willing to invest in it any type of way, and they don't want to use your products or your services. They're going to go to someone who's already established. So if you have money, then guess what you can do? You could pay people to actually use your products and to put a review, or maybe send your products to someone and you could deal with the loss because, hey, you got this money. Regardless, the point is that having something ahead of time makes a difference than not having something. And that privilege alone, or the ability to have that money, is going to put you on a different level, not just manifesting. Regardless, reality is co-created, not individually created. Reality merges your choices, other people's choices, systems, structures, biology, chance, collective forces, history, and environment. Your thoughts shape how you navigate reality. Consciousness is a participant, not a dictator. Privilege matters, access matters, power matters, birth circumstances matter, networks matter, luck matters. If you were born with safety, money, stability, and support, please stop pretending you personally manifested every advantage like some spiritual genius. And if you grew up surviving trauma, don't let anyone tell you your pain was a mindset failure. That's disgusting, by the way. A child is not manifesting abuse. A patient is not attracting disease. A worker is not thinking wrong when they get crushed by a corrupt system. Some things happen because the world is unfair, period. And when I drill into this even more, it reeks of privilege. The person born in a country with limited water that have to carry their homes on their back doesn't have the option to think their lives better because they're focused on survival. And they didn't think the dirt dry either. Sometimes I feel like the people that say your thoughts create reality was a trick to get people to stop complaining, because the person didn't have the capacity for empathy or compassion. It seems easier to say it's your fault than to validate your experience because you created it. And it just reminds me of this time I heard someone going off on somebody because they were complaining about their lives. And they were like, well, you chose this. Stop complaining. Get over it. And it just convinces me whoever started this was a privileged megalomaniac who lacked empathy. Because why are we here? And why would that be the response? And it also goes to show how dangerous this thought form is. If your thought created your reality, or you chose to be here, then you don't deserve any empathy for the suffering that you're experiencing. And you know what? Many of you eat this up like a 5-star meal. And you do this because it gives you control. It makes you feel like, oh, my thought is my reality, so I could just change my life. I just have to think and manifest it. It takes you out of the seat of passivity, but also it makes you feel powerful. Even though it's temporary, it still makes you feel powerful until something outside of you just, it hits you on the butt. Like something outside of your control just turns your life upside down. And what do? Right? Your entire existence crumbled because you refuse to acknowledge how nonsensical it was to think you can control your reality with billions of other people around you that are also trying to control their reality as well. And forget about the billions, right? What if one person wanted the same thing that you wanted, right? What if there's a person that wants your car or the house that you have, or maybe not have, but the house that you want, the job that you want, then who gets it? Are you going to blame yourself for not manifesting hard enough? Is this going to be the battle of the minds? The stronger manifestor wins? Or could it be based on other possible things like time, money, access, skill, personality, whatever the case may be? right? I want you to think about it, because I have a strong feeling that if you were going after the same house as someone else, that if they had the higher amount of money they could put down and they were willing to pay more for the same house, they would probably get it over you, even if you're a stronger manifester. I'm just saying, that's just a lot. Then on top of that, when I also think about this, I imagine those gamblers who really believed that they were going to win, bet all their money, and then they lost. I'm sure there is nothing you could say to that person to convince them that they didn't think that they were going to win, because they surely did. And they thought so strongly about it that they lost all their money. So yeah, it's not just about thought process or being aligned or a strong manifester. Sometimes some things just don't go your way, and it's not always going to, because spirituality does not mean that you get whatever you want. You still are living as a human being, dealing with human conditions. And again, yes, your mind does matter, but it's not the universe's steering wheel. You are not responsible for everything that happens to you. You are responsible for what you do next. Spirituality that ignores these forces become cruelty disguised as optimism. And you don't have to pretend everything happens for a reason. You can choose the meaning you make from it, or choose not to make meaning at all. That honors your autonomy. If you had traumatic experiences, your trauma is not a mindset problem. It's a wound inflicted by others, and healing often requires safety, connection, boundaries, time, and support, not better thoughts. And ultimately, a worldview that cannot hold children being abused, people blindsided by illness, workers betrayed by corporations, systemic injustices, or just plain flat out randomness is not a spiritual worldview. It's a fantasy. A real spiritual worldview must be able to look at the world as it is, not just as we wish it were. Thoughts influence how we respond to reality, but they don't control external events. If they did, children wouldn't be abused and healthy people wouldn't get cancer. Reality is more complex than mindset alone.